Let's talk about before versus after save flows, or fast field updates versus actions and related records on a record trigger flow. Which one do you want to use when you're starting to build a new flow? Well, the answer to that question really comes down to what record are you going to be updating in the flow? If you're going to update the record that fired the flow, then you want to use a fast field update or a before save flow. If you're updating anything else, then you want to use actions and related records or an after save flow. Now, these are titled fast field updates versus action related records, but I'm talking about before versus after. And why is that? Well, if you'll notice in the descriptions right here, you'll see fast field update says it runs before the record is saved. And actions related record says it runs after the record is saved to the database. It's the same concept as if you're going to use a before versus after save trigger when writing Apex code. So let's take a look at this just a little bit. Fast field updates or before save flows have a little bit different way that they work versus the actions related records. So I'm going to create one for a lead. I'm going to use a very simple example for this. If we have a lead process where when the MQL or the marketing qualified lead score hits 80% and we want the lead status to update to working, then that's going to be a fast field update flow because we're updating the record that had a value change on it that meets the requirements. So let's set this up. I've got my lead. I'm going to set it to when a record is created or updated because this can come either way. I'm going to set my conditions and I'm going to find my MQL field. Say when my MQL field is greater than or equal to 80, then we're going to want to fire this off. But I don't want this to fire every time the record is touched and that value is over that, so I'm going to mark only when the record is updated to meet the requirements. And as you know, I'm not a fan of the auto layout, so I'm going to move it. Now normally, I would use an assignment and then an update records to update whatever records I'm working with in the flow. However, since this is a before save flow, they work a little bit differently. Assignments and update records both do the same thing on a before save flow. If the update that you're, or if the assignment that you're going to apply applies to the record that triggered the flow, it's going to apply that value directly to the record. That's because this is before save. This is working with the record before the data is committed to the database. So as a rule of thumb, just to keep things consistent and just so that I understand better what's going on whenever I open a flow, I always use update records in my before save flows when I'm working with my firing record. So we're just going to give a quick name, a description, updates the lead, whenever the MQL is 80 or higher. And I actually should say updates the lead status to working. And then come down here and find my status field. Set my value to working. Now this is a very simple flow. You could have other criteria going on. You could have other things going on, and that's totally fine. Just understand that when you need to work with the original record, the record that triggered the flow, you're just going to use an update record, apply your values, and you're done. And that's because it's a before save flow. So then you would save that. Always make sure you've got a description and save it. And there you go. Now you have your before save flow. So very simple. Before save flow means you're going to update the record that fired the flow. And after save flow means you're going to update a record different than the one that fired the flow. So let's take a look at that real quick. So I'm going to back out of this. and create a new flow. And this is going to be a little bit different. But we're going to do a new flow on the event object, and we're going to do it as an aftersave. We're going to set our entry criteria. It's going to simply be the who ID, which could be a contact or a lead. So I'm going to say the who ID starts with 00Q, which happens to be the first 3 characters of a lead ID. And I'm going to say when a record is created or updated. I'm going to add additional criteria here. I want to say that the end date and time is less than or equal to. Now notice I can't access the flow's global time variable in my entry criteria, so I actually can't do this condition right now because I want to make sure this only applies after the event has taken place. So I'm going to go ahead and take that one off. All right, so I've got my record trigger flow and event, and my entry criteria is it a lead? So how am I going to know if I should actually count this against my MQL on the lead? Well, I'm going to use a couple of things. I'm going to create a decision here. Is this event MQL qualified? I'm going to say uses the below criteria to determine if this event should be used against the MQL value. I'm just going to do a simple yes, and my default outcome is going to be a no. And my criteria here is going to be that the event end time is less than or equal to the flow's current date and time, which will tell me that we're after the event should have happened. And then I'm going to use an additional criteria, and I'm going to say, did I find a task? And that'll be my criteria. I'm going to say that my requirements for my team are that when they do their phone call, they create a new task and they log the notes from the phone call. Which means that I should have a task on my lead where the created date is going to be greater than or equal to the end time of my event. So I'm simply going to say created date is greater than or equal to my record end time. I'm also going to say that on my task, again, the who ID, and this time I'm going to say the who ID equals my lead ID. There we go. So my lead ID, who ID, will be the same as my record of my event ID. And I'm going to pull this into a custom task variable. And all I care about is, did I find a task that actually meets this criteria for this particular example? Connect these together. Now, if the criteria matches, I'm going to do an assignment. And I'm going to update my lead MQL. I'm updating the lead, not the event. So I need a variable to hold that lead in. So I'm going to create a lead variable. And find my MQL field. And I'm going to say equals. And now I don't want to set this. I want to add to it. So I'm going to do a formula. So I'm going to do for MQL value. Data type is going to be a number on this one. Don't need any decimal points. And I'm simply going to say my lead MQL plus they get another 10 points for having talked to them. Now, how do I get the original MQL value? Is I'm going to have to look up that lead. So let's add a get record here. We're going to get our lead, where the lead ID equals my record or my event, who ID. That's all I care about there. And let's store that in that SO lead variable. And I need the MQL field. There we go. Now we can connect this together. That's a yes. And that's an assignment. Now on the before save, we just used an update records and we were done. This is an after save flow. So my assignment is only within the flow itself. It's actually not applied to any records yet. So now that I've done the assignment, I need to add an update record. We're going to update the lead. Specified. We're going to say use the ID from the values. Sorry, use the ID from a record or a record collection. And we'll set that. Now, it's important to make sure that when you run your update lead, whatever variable you use has the ID of the record that you're updating. In this case, I know it does because in my get record, it's applied right here. If I was doing something where I was updating a lead but I did not do a get record, then in my assignment, I would need to apply that ID to my variable, which would be something like this. In this case, I didn't need to do that because I already got it. And there you go. So we've talked about a before save flow where we updated the record that fired the process, and we did an after save flow where we updated a record different or related to the one that fired the process. So there's a little bit of information about those two, how to use them, which one to use where. I hope that helps. If you like this series, subscribe to the channel, like our videos, ask questions in the comments, and I'll answer your questions through more videos. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.